Good morning, everyone. This is staff meeting. It's Thursday, September 7th. We're really excited because we're all here, but Jacob is back from college. And I guess Bryan's even graced us with his profoundly masculine and wise presence. So I didn't get, you see, when everybody comes on one at a time, you get to tease everybody a little bit, right? So Francis, everybody came on too fast, and now Francis is here, and I can't say anything about him. And Luke's here, and God forbid I'm not gonna miss an opportunity to start something with Luke, but hopefully we'll find opportunities in the meeting. So if I understand correctly, we have only a couple hours this morning, and we have a couple of subjects to cover. But I like to warm up before we have to do the real business. Excuse me. So Noah has run a little experiment and he wants to talk about it today. So that experiment is fascinating, and his conclusions are fascinating. So Noah, please go ahead.
I ran a post that's got more views in the last 48 hours than all my posts combined normally get in about 2 months. So it's obviously I've hit a nerve, and the subject or the theme of the post is I talk about how historically men don't protect women in the plural. We protect our women, or women that we have an investment in. And this hit a key in a few areas where many men said, thank you for articulating what I've been trying to explain to other people for a while. And so it's in the zeitgeist. Men are thinking about this. What do I owe women in general? And I talk about how we went from this, the norm is throughout history, we only protect our women. Then we created this high trust society where it was advantageous to protect women we didn't know. And for the first time in history, women had rights of their own accord and not because of their connection to us through some man. But that was an irreciprocal relationship because we offered them something and we asked for absolutely nothing. And all irreciprocal relationships eventually become unbalanced, lead to resentment and even hatred. And that's what we're seeing right now, where men say, not my problem, not my woman, not my problem. And it's going to the other extreme where we're almost back into that tribal, oh, she's not got my colors, I don't help her. And I got a interesting reaction from women as well. There was basically three kinds. One kind of woman said, yes, that makes some sense. And I never thought about it that way. And that's usually the most attractive, youngest, highest sexual market value women realize that because most of them are in a relationship with a man who does protect them. And so it's easy for them to admit that that's a reality. And then I got two other kinds in general of broken women. One who said, no, men are who we have to be protected from, irregardless of who does the protection, and that men are the predators. And those are women who were preyed upon themselves, or their experience with men has always been predatory. And the other is the women that say, we don't need no man. And those are the women that had no man. And there is a third kind that say, violence itself is the problem, and we have to eliminate violence. And these are generally the women that were, they have a father. He protected them so well that they can't understand the concept of violence because they've never been subjected to it. So we have these three kinds of dysfunction, the last one being probably the least egregious. But it's an interesting control experiment because I can see now how touchy this subject is because it's a rapid change in how we're dealing with people. So we're studying cooperation in the Natural Law Institute. And right now, cooperation between the sexes is breaking down. And we're almost back to primitive tribe level of cooperation in the big urban centers.
I don't want to run away with the science behind this, but it's so true. It's painful. But I don't think the comprehension that the origin of trust either can be, in other words, the loci of trust can develop somewhere. It can develop between men as in war. It can develop between families or clans or tribes. And developing it between the sexes is rather, the way you phrased it, Noah, is it's very high on the Maslowian pyramid of social evolution. And so it's really hard to get there. And if you don't have it, if you break that down, you start to have the opposite effect where you're breaking down the family. And so if you've broken down trust and you've broken down, if you actually can make it there, you break down that trust and you break down the family. That's the higher, that's worse, right? I mean, it's bad enough you break down the sex trust, but if you break down the family trust, then there's no trust to build on, because a family is the institution that trust is built from, and all the social, political, national, right, civilizational trust builds upon that. If you want to produce a low trust society, the feminists in their feminists, well, it's really the Marxists, the neo-Marxists, but the feminists in their efforts have destroyed the thing they most wanted to do. And the thing is, they did it on purpose.
Yep.
I mean, it was a purposeful destruction of the institution of marriage. Anyway, so I didn't want to run away with
horizontal power structures make vertical power structures more difficult.
Correct.
So they have to break down the connection between men, between women, and between the sexes in order to control us. And this is why we fight it by strengthening those bonds. One of the other things that I noticed repeatedly is there a lot of women would say, why are men like this? We hate men. Why don't they protect us? And almost the same exact thing. And these are broken women. And I commented that, you know, you're not really incentivizing men to protect you when you start off with "we hate men." And most men are driven to protect women, partly of instinct, but partly because we look at a woman and we see our mother, our wife, our daughter in her face, and we want to protect her. So of course, the more she looks like us, the more likely we are to feel protective. But also, if we have a bad relationship with the women in our lives because they're disrespectful to us, we're more likely to say, maybe she deserves a smack. Yeah. Right or wrong. I'm not prescribing. I'm saying what happens. So guys will say, maybe she deserves a smack because they don't feel protective or defensive of women because women have not been respectful to them in their life. And this is a mutual relationship. You will generally not find a loving, respectful, kind woman without men to defend her. Men can sense that. And it turns out the woman whose example I gave, she'd been assaulted with a brick. After I posted this, several guys found videos of her assaulting men on the street and recording it. So she was doing this for fun. So it looked like she hit some guy and the guy wouldn't take it and smacked her back. So this is why men are hesitant to defend women nowadays. They don't know if she started it.
Mm-hmm. We afford them to be aggressive and predatory everywhere. And we can't tell the difference between predatory, weak, vulnerable, or innocent. Yeah. We only have the duty to protect the vulnerable and the innocent, right? We have a duty to punish those who are predatory.
Yes.
And those who are weak, we're supposed to be training. So it's not.
The lines have been blurred.
Can't tell them apart.
Yeah.
Well, and men don't invest in other men or don't protect other men they're not invested in either. So it's they're achieving a parity they asked for but don't actually want.
Other reasons why men don't defend women is say that women voted for this when it's like consequences of leftism, diversity, and then because they might end up themselves punished for even defending her.
I mean, I want to hear Noah's insights, so I'm sorry if I keep throwing in the science, but you you used to be able to go out and I used to say, well, if you think you're under threat by men and that men will protect you, this is true. This is just this is back in the 80s, 90s. I say, watch what happens if some woman screams for help. Now, what do women do? They look and they freeze. What do men do? Well, most of them run at the problem instantly. I know I do. I just lose all context of what I'm doing and I run at the problem. So, I mean, you're profoundly safe if men are around, who are anonymous, but so I don't really, these women have really created this scenario. Excuse me, I'm trying to figure out how to bridge this argument, but the real truth is, who is creating all this policy? It's actually single women.
They're demanding from the government what only men in their proximity can deliver them.
Thank you.
Well, there's another thing too. If you act like prey, predators will go after you.
That's right.
So if you're a woman and you believe that every man is a predator, you're going to act like prey. Now, I have coached a number of women who came to me saying, why do I keep getting these predatory men in my life? And we broke down their behavior, and they were behaving in a way that invited predators into their life.
Weak.
As soon as that changes, anyone who's dealt with bullying in school knows that.
Yep.
There are kids that get bullied and kids that don't. And there are, if you know what you're doing, you can see in the playground which kid's more likely to get bullied. I think the teachers should have training, except sometimes they're the bullies, but they should have the training to be able to, that's a kid likely to get bullied. And it's the kids that are likely to get bullied that need to go into anti-bully training, not the bullies. Because you're not going to change the bullies by teaching them new ways to bully kids, and explaining how bad it is. They don't care. You're going to have to deal with the victims. And I had a very insightful client, and she said to me, growing up, she had two friends, and she always wondered why she has no father and why she was treated differently than they were. And she says it wasn't until her 30s that it struck her that those two women had a dad who was a Marine and two brothers that were Marines, and they married Marines. So they were in the middle of this group of militant men, and she had nobody. And men treated her differently because men will tend, especially all men will tend this way, but especially predatory men will tend to avoid women that are under protection and treat those women that are under protection much better than they treat women who aren't. Because we take our signals from other men too. And if no man is interested in protecting a woman, we take that as a signal the same way that if no woman is interested in being with a man, women take that as a signal that he's not interested to date. That's why as soon as you get married, women come all over you. They'll ignore you when you're single. You start dating, you get a few more interests. You get married, and all of a sudden they're all over you because they're looking for social confirmation. And this is all really deep stuff that we understand. And if you're watching this for the first time and you want to understand this, you need to subscribe to the channel, because this is the kind of deep understanding of human nature that we're explaining here.
Noah, I'd be interested to know of your client. That female client was the two friends who were who have Marines surrounding them. Is what kind of signals did her friends give off versus she did? And what is it that the other men knew that her friends were under protection of the Marines or have a circle of Marines, or more about the way that they behave, the way that they present themselves? Because the first tool in line of self-defense is actually presence, even without any speech whatsoever. It's a way that, in layman's terms, the way that you carry yourself. And so I'd be very interested to see what kind of signals was she giving off versus her friends, and that's a difference.
So a woman that's not under protection, it's kind of like, you ever found a stray dog and the first thing they do, if they're not aggressive, most stray dogs are not aggressive. They'll curl up, they'll be super overly juvenilely pleasant, and they'll try to win your affection. They're saying, I'm not dangerous. Okay. But if you walk up to a dog that's owned by someone and the owner's there, the dog is confident. Even if it's not aggressive, they'll tend to be much more confident. And it's much the same way in people. So the unclaimed women, they're desperate for male attention. They know they're vulnerable, and so they become overly passive, overly accepting of people intruding across their boundaries and their borders. And so it's almost inviting someone to take possession of them. Whereas the women who are already under someone's protection, they don't do that. They tend to be more standoffish. They might be friendly, but they have clear barriers there of what, you can't pass this barrier. And they know that barrier will be defended. The reputation, of course, does play into it in a small community, but you can visually see the difference in their behavior. It's a difference in confidence level.
I think I could chime in here to follow on to that idea. From my myth matrix work, there's this dynamic around archetypes, and that there's three main archetypes. You have your youthful, that's the virgin and the hero, and you go into the king and the queen when you're partnered and having children, and then after that is the crone and the mentor. I think the challenge when you titled this, Noah, around strange women, is that we're going to have a repulsion or a disgust response to the shadow side, which should be natural, meaning the coward and the whore should have a disgust response, and we're not going to want to stick up or protect particularly a whore, or if she presents herself as a whore. And you made a good comment that when this dog doesn't have an owner, it's more cowardly, seeks more affection, wants the attention of men. That type of stuff all shows up as whorish behavior. Same with gay men. Gay men is just basically a male whore because they drive for more sexual activity because they're not pairing and partnering, so they can have upwards of thousands of male partners as a substitute. So then you have the femme fatale and the tyrant. Obviously, we're not going to put any support or defense there. And then the third would be a hag or a miser, and we're naturally not going to defend anything there. It sounds like the negative responses that you got would fit into either a whore, a femme fatale, or a hag.
Yes.
Pretty easily.
Yeah.
It's funny, but Bryan has modernized Jungian archetypes in because the mythology we work from today is actually movies instead of,
right.
I just said, because people may not understand where Bryan's coming from. He has a system he calls myth matrix, but it's really Jungian archetypes applied to movies, because that's actually our mythology today. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to contextualize that for you, Bryan.
Yeah, that is an important part of it, is our natural response to it. There are women who their experience is that men everywhere they go bend over backwards to help them. And these women in general are extremely respectful of men, treat men well. And is it that men treated them well and therefore they're like this, or do men treat them well because they're like this? And the answer is yes. It's both. It's a cycle. So if you are a woman and you're finding that men don't treat you well, you can't do much about the men. You have to start with yourself and what signals you're giving off and how you're behaving. And that's the opposite of what you're told. You're told it's not your fault. You have nothing to do with it. It just happened to you. Then why doesn't it happen to other women?
So can I defend women on 2 points? All right, because let me flip it around a little bit.
We'll beat up on men eventually too.
What?
We usually beat up on men. So.
Well, of course, right. So let's. What did you just? Oh shit! I went down you said that, and then went down all the things I could predict that you were going to talk about, and I lost what you were going to talk about. What was the last thing you said? So the first thing I want to deal with, how women see the world versus how men see it. And then you talked about how
the responses you get are from
right.
your own behavior.
And the second point is the difference between men and women and their ability to self-regulate. And so men self-regulate easily because we are very dangerous to each other. And so the second reason we are self-regulate easily is because we don't have women's brains. Our brains are working in drawers, right? It's much easier mentally to be a man, right? I mean, if we want to think about something, we think about it. If we want to think about something else, we think about that. If we want to think about nothing, we can actually think about nothing, and we're perfectly freaking happy, right? But a woman's mind doesn't work like that. It's like the Windows system. It's like throwing up, or you try to go to navigate to a website, and all of a sudden it pops up a million windows. That's what a woman's mind is like. They have no ability to do that, and they have no ability to self-regulate it unless, usually it's if they've practiced sports, they've engaged in women's sports. So, and then eventually if they have 4 more kids. The second thing is that women walk down the street, and because men pay it, they're attention whores, right? I mean, that's the drives women. That's their behavior, is how can I get attention, because that's how I can manipulate you or influence you, right? Manipulate being the negative and influence being the positive. And so they run on the street, and the problem is they attract the attention of men. Now, men, we're like, is this available? Is this available? Is this available? Is this available? Because we see women see chocolates when they're when they're having their period, right? I mean, it's just there's never enough, right? So doesn't mean we're gonna, but so women feel that this attention is a threat, right? They'd like to avoid it. So if you have this attention problem, you perceive all this attention as a threat, and you're uncomfortable with the conflict of making men go away, which I really love the Eastern European thing of just fuck off, right? It works so great, and there's no conversation there. And then you've got this freaking interrupt-driven nonsense in your head all the time. It's completely logical, because women are prey animals, and we're not. So how do we get women to the reason I'm saying this is, if what's happened is that the left has used all these psychoses. In other words, the left is creating appeals to psychoses in order to disrupt trust, right? So how do we help women get over this problem of it? And what I hear you saying is, well, that's what men do, is we provide that security. The problem is you have to select for men who provide the security. I'm talking too long, but I'm trying to lay out 3 points, and I'm hoping that you're going to run with it.
Yeah, the selecting the right kind of men, women on their own tend to be unmoored, and it's the main value that men provide women today is actually the psychological and emotional protection, not the physical protection. We're in a pretty safe world, and most of the United States is almost a crime-free zone if you get outside of the big cities, but we still need to provide that emotional and psychological anchoring for them. And this does not need to be your husband. In fact, the kind of man that will provide an anchor for an unmoored woman isn't going to bother doing that if she's too crazy. He's got other options. And so the men most capable of helping women are also the ones that least have to take a broken woman in. They're the ones that are more likely to get the woman in best condition. So you might have to go and find your male mentor some other way. You might have to have, make friends with an older man, preferably someone that's sufficiently old enough that it's not going to turn into a romantic relationship. You may have to pay for a coach. I have some women come to me and simply say, I don't have enough experience with men. I need a male viewpoint on my search for a husband or my attempts to improve my marriage. Or sometimes they're married, but they're disconnected from their husbands, so they're not getting that anchoring. The woman is the one who creates her world. If she allows other people to create it for her, which is what most women do, then she has to make sure she's allowing someone benevolent to create it. Or if there's no one benevolent around, she has to take the reins. She has to take that agency. And that's very, very difficult for women. I think it's possible for most women to do that. I don't think most want to do it. And generally, men do what they have to do, and women do what they want to do. And this is a problem. So my usual stance is I align the woman's wants with what's healthy for her, since that's what she's going to follow. Use hypnosis to align her wants with what's going to be good for her, so that she's pursuing that naturally. And that's what you do too. If you're a father, you help your daughters align their desires with what is healthy.
Yeah, I always say that unfortunately women are attracted to what they understand. What they understand may not be very good.
Yeah.
And so Noah, I just want to interject for the audience that no, what is the average, not for your practice, for the general, how long are people usually in therapy? What's the
2 years or so is the minimum that most people are in therapy. If
It's
they don't drop out right away.
it's 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So it's 3 years. And how long is somebody in your care?
In general, you get radical change in about 12 sessions. So that's usually 12 weeks or 24 if you do every other week.
Okay, so what do you attribute the success of your, because you help both men and women, right? So
Yeah.
So how do what do you attribute the difference between what you do and what because you're not your method is relatively evolved. I mean, not relatively, quite sophisticated, but why is it only taking 12 weeks for you to make a radical change, where it takes the industry 3 years?
If you are going to help someone solve all of their problems, that can take 3, 4, 5 years if they're really deeply in trouble. If you teach them how to solve their own problems, that takes a few weeks. Essentially, you teach them a system that they can use to process their own issues. At the end of those 12 weeks, they have a radical change because they now know how to solve their problems. Doesn't mean they're all solved. Even if you solved everyone, there's people who go to 3 years of therapy and then they get married and they realize they need to come back again because the stresses of being married bring out all of their unresolved issues around relationships. Good, they get that dealt with. That's 2 years there. Then they have a kid. And now all of their stuff that is connected with their childhood starts coming out again. They have to go back for 2 more years. Instead, I teach them how to process themselves. And then they come back to me once in a while for a problem that's too big for them to do on their own. 1 session, 6 months, something like this. And that's a lot more efficient. And once they understand the system, they can teach their children. They can teach their friends. So it has this ripple effect. Whereas if you solve individual problems, that might not be applicable to anyone but that one client. And I much prefer systems over problem solving.
Why can't we all be taught the equivalent of what you're teaching in high school?
Yes, that would be ideal. How to think. The problem with doing that is most high school teachers, we'd have to teach them to think first so that they could teach the kids. In the short term, with the current system, we'd have better luck doing it privately.
Yeah.
And also the school system is not set up, maybe by design, it's not set up to produce high agency people, produce solvent people, but to produce cattle.
I actually broached this when I used to be an education consultant. So I helped schools understand how to integrate technology into the classroom in a productive way rather than as a distraction. And I asked some people that study this, people that had worked with some of the big names in education. What they said to me was, we can't teach the kids to think. You know why? Because the parents will come out after us if we do. We get a kid come to school and his parents have manipulated him, and they said that's the majority of the kids. And we teach this kid how to think, and he goes home and he tells mom and dad, no, that's a lie. That's a manipulation. Why are you telling me this? Santa Claus isn't real. Now you have the teachers fighting with the parents over teaching their kids how to think. And the teachers, they just don't care. They're going to get paid one way or the other, and they don't want that fight.
It's the same reason we don't teach economics. Because if you teach economics, your kids come home and say, Mommy, Daddy, why are you fucking losers?
Yeah.
Right?
Why are you
it's
still
the reason
poor?
we don't do it, right?
Yeah. Why are you still poor?
What, Dad, don't you realize that you're the reason we're poor? Because you're a lazy alcoholic.
Look, the families where it's most needed are the ones that will resist it the most.
Correct.
The families where you don't need this because the dad's teaching their kids this stuff anyway,
Yeah.
they wouldn't resist it. And that's the problem.
Well,
this is why we naturally,
when you think about it, it's fucking absurd. Sorry.
Well, this is why we naturally stratify. And look, if you're looking to get married, people, one of the underestimated things is look for someone that's in your class.
Yeah, absolutely.
People don't think about that. My family was really big on that. My great grandparents marry someone in your class.
Yes.
And they were very clear what our class meant. And the reason for that is if you don't, they're gonna, I hate to use the word think, it's not accurate, but they're gonna think in a way that's so different than yours that you might as well be different species.
That's right.
There's a very succinct term in Chinese that exactly describes that. Basically, it literally means that you're like door to door, that you and the family you marry got to be door to door.
Yeah.
When I got my
But
first,
women do have the option of marrying up.
So they can adjust very quickly to new forms of thinking when they want to. And there's this is the other thing too. I said many women won't want to do it. It's because there's no motivation to do it.
Right.
But if men withdraw their protection, maybe we're creating a motivation by doing that.
Yeah.
I want to add a comment that leads into a bigger question that I don't think we've addressed here for a while. The comment comes from Luke's Primer, chapter 15. Your interview with Curt, you had a really funny quip about competence leads to confidence, which leads to enjoyment. And we know that women want to have fun. They want to enjoy, and that's a big part of the child rearing is to enjoy it. I think there's some portion, I don't know what out there, that have been horrified by childbirth, the pain, the drug, the hospital, the potential death, all that type of stuff. That's why I've gone on quite a bit about orgasmic ecstatic birth as a possibility, because it may change that, but it doesn't take away that you still need to build competence in something. And Noah, it sounds like some of the hypnotic or psychological therapeutic coaching work that you do is the same thing that women would like to get good at if they could accurately see reality. But you said something about if they could just shift their perception, which is kind of like the first trick, and that's immediate, right? So it leads into this big overarching question around, we're pretty clear that men are good or should be good in terms of agency and want more responsibility in terms of sexual market value, agency to demonstrate sovereignty. But I don't see where the complementary unit is for women. We know men produce, women reproduce. So I would think that it's somewhere in this reproductive channel that we can say, okay, men are good at sovereignty. We can be sovereign. We can basically use force or trade. We're not as strong in the seduction. That's like women in the women's realm, and that women are more in the relationship, right? But if we see this deliberate breakdown of family as the first and foundational political unit, then effectively relationship has been destroyed, right? So my overarching question is to find out if we were to trade, like we're saying, we're going to give women a house, and within that house, they have dominion and power over reproduction, because effectively that's always what they threaten. You know, you're an incel, nobody's going to have sex with you, or women, they try to do their thing, don't have sex with your man unless they do X, Y, Z. So I think there's something in that realm, but I'm saying that there's a real weakness because they don't have real competence, and therefore they don't have real confidence, and they don't have real enjoyment of whatever they're portraying that they're good at. If you say, oh, well, they're good at getting attention. Well, look at the attention we're getting now, and you see a amount of caked on makeup and the filters that they use and how they're being exposed. that they're not even close to being an 8 or a 9. Once you take their makeup off, they're like a 5 and a 6. They're totally average. So I know I'm painting a pretty broad picture, but I do want to ask a question of, if we kind of hang the hat that men are sovereign, and if we're going to have some complementary trade, like if we want seduction and force to meet in the middle for trade, what is that complementary force that women can be like, okay, you're totally badass, or you have competence, confidence, and enjoyment in this thing. And I'd say kind of look at the women that have 4+ children, they're feminine and all of that, to be where would they really radiate as a queen?
Yeah, so women's primary value add that they can give to men is cooperation. So men have our mission of what we're trying to accomplish, and women can do 2 things. One is inspire us, so they can encourage, in other words, encourage us to be the best version of ourselves, to pursue what it is that is our mission. And the other thing is that they have transformative power. So they can transform the things we give them into things that we can't do on our own. You give the woman a home, or a house, she transforms that into a home. You give her food, she transforms that into a meal. You give her your sperm, she transforms that into a baby. And these are things that we can't do. The first 2 we could do, but that would require us then to ignore our mission, to ignore the greater things that we need to pursue. And so a woman that's properly aligned with us amplifies us. And that's her job, is to amplify our abilities by being that counter there to it. And you can be successful as a man on your own, but most men are not successful until after they're married.
It was much easier to be successful married. But I didn't have any of these challenges being married. And I think it's partly my generation, but look what you have to look forward to, Jacob. You guys are screwed.
But I am seeing that the younger girls are coming back around. They don't know what to do, but at least they're now willing to admit they don't know what to do. Like I don't
think that there's just general recognition, because it's so widespread now that the intersexual relationship is breaking down and the family's breaking down, and this is causing catastrophic effects for almost everyone. And then the other thing is that the social media tends to, like all attention seeking, tends to illustrate the worst, worst behavior.
Yeah, I can forgive ignorance. I can forgive ignorance in those who don't know, and arrogance in those who do.
Yeah.
But what I can't forgive is both arrogance and ignorance combined. It's just too much. And I think we're starting to see a change, a shift in young people, where they're saying, my mother's generation and my grandmother's generation screwed up. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do, but I know it's not the way that they did it.
Yes.
And now someone has to provide them an alternative. And that's partly our job, is what is the alternative behavior to the consume everything, selfish, hedonistic life that's been going on. And some will say, we'll go to the church for that. Half the churches are the same, promoting the same thing. There isn't a solution.
You can't shop your way. It's like, I say that when I go into a relationship, I just try everything to make it work. You can't shop your way into a relationship. You have to make it. And that's through finding somebody that you have basic moral lifetime goals that are similar to. And that also means like your state of being, right? I want to be calm, right? Or I want to be competitive, or that kind of thing. They have to meet you on that level. But after that, it's like, okay, you want that? How can I help you get it? And then she does the same thing back to you. You want that? How can I help you get it? That's all it consists of, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we appeal to external ideals, rather than this is what you want, how can I help you get it? And this is what you want, and how can I help you get it? I think that's where these things break down. And unfortunately, we live in this mythical ideal, this world of mythics, which is basically competing ideological falsehoods. we're not gonna have 1950s style families if we're gonna have two people working full-time and not focusing as much on the household as they are in the business. If both of you are basically focused on your career so much that the house is basically a dorm, that's what it's gonna act like. So, I mean, the way I was trying to spin this was, well, it's one thing to sit here and talk about and recognize it. And I think you're correct in that certainly the collapse has been visible enough now that the generational shift might be happening. But what can we do with these essentially broken women that we already have? I mean, are we gonna write off two generations?
Well, there are going to be some women that simply refuse to cooperate, and we can't force them. Nature may force them to cooperate because it's that or starve, but we can't do it. But we look at what happened at the end of in between the war period in Germany, and how hard things were on women there, and how much damage they sustained, and how fast they were able to recover when they were given the right environment for that. I think with the right incentives, women will change a lot faster than we can imagine. See, we're looking at it from a male perspective where I don't care about your damn incentives, but women do.
Women do, right?
Women will do what they're incentivized to do. And so all we have to do is convince enough men to align the incentives correctly. And that's not even a majority of men. And all of a sudden everything shifts, and it shifts slowly at first, which is what we're seeing now, and then fast. And then it's unstoppable.
So one of the things I want to bring up here is that the female weirdness of female behavior from a man's standpoint is due to during puberty, her empathy is exacerbated, just like our physicality is. Their empathy is expanded because what nature's trying to do is provide her a means of intuitively understanding what the wants of an infant or infants, small children. The problem is, so that's great, but until you understand that's a female adaptive capacity, and that capacity declines as she becomes a member of the workforce instead of a mother. And so, one of the problems of this delay of relationships and delay of marriage and delay of family is we're burning off the woman's adaptive capacity. And that's important because it's adapting to the man and the man to her, and it's adapting to her children. So what's happening is she's becoming a more rigid human. And she says, well, I mean, and then you wonder why you get into the later age and it's harder for them. So it's not doing any of us any good to have shifted relationship formation from the teens to the 30s. I mean, it's actually incredibly harmful. And if you look at, I don't know who was saying this a minute ago, if you look at it, it's basically ending up in consumption. And that consumption's basically ending up in the financial class as returns on the financial class. And or the bureaucratic class. It's not ending up to the benefit of the average family.
So to fix
I had an uncle married.
To fix this, does it require us to fix the political economic system such that you don't have to have double income family?
Well, that's what I would do, but most women want to work at least part-time in some capacity. I think Brandon, you have a spiel on this, but it's women have fun working together. I mean, the question is whether it's for the experience of socializing and having a little spending money, or if it's an economic necessity to keep the household. Because what you'd like, of course, is for the woman to be able to move in and out of the workplace, right? Or to have her money result as disposable income rather than it be necessary for maintenance of an ever expanding McMansion and filling it with stuff. The consequence of which is to you consume your attention precisely so you don't have to interact with, adapt to, and learn how to compromise with other people in the production of social goods.
You are right that women do want to work with other women at something outside the house. My wife's a teacher, And she works at the school where my children go. And she works there. The children wouldn't be going there and she wouldn't be working there if it wasn't a package deal. And she said, basically, instead of homeschooling, I'm going to be working with my friends. It's all women. Mostly it's women that she knows for years. And we're working with my friends, with our kids, and I get paid. So I do the same thing I was doing at home, but we can wear out someone else's building and use someone else's money and tools and equipment, and I get paid to do it. And, you know, because she doesn't need that, we don't need that money. It's not necessary for the household expenses. She can be a very hard negotiator there. She can say, look, when I'm not teaching a class, I'm going to do whatever I want. The other teachers that don't have a husband like that, where they can't afford it, they have to do things. They've got all these assignments between classes. My wife just does what she wants between the classes, goes and sees my kids, you know, does some chores, whatever, does some paperwork for our business. She can do anything she wants because of that. I like the method of giving significant tax breaks permanently to women for how many children they have, as long as they're married to the father of those children.
Yep.
And if you have 4 children, you get 100% of your, you know, you don't pay any taxes. There's a huge incentive for women to have the children. We need them to have the children. We can worry about whether they stay home with them or not. That's a second problem. We got to deal with the first problem. They're not even having children. And in fact, we have to deal with the problem that comes even before that. They're not having relationships with men. Men and women just aren't getting together and having relationships anymore. They're sitting in their separate corners wishing that they could find each other.
I find that same dynamic that your family experiences. We use a homeschool group, right? A homeschool co-op for our stuff, right? And it's all the mothers that run the homeschool co-op, so they're spending all day with the children and with each other. So they have a lot of that female socialization throughout the day, and they form really tight bonds there. And those families all become very close to each other through that bond, right? So we invest very, very heavily in each other. So I think that's just another approach to achieving that same outside of the whole house work without losing the mothering in the process, right? You want something that the women can do that incorporates the raising of the children. I think there's a lot of value in that. You know, we talked a little bit about the nature reasserting itself. That's kind of my big thing here, right? Just got a couple nuances to what Curt was talking about earlier. You know, men are good at self-regulating, not because we're dangerous to each other, but when we're dangerous to each other, right? We're seeing now, as we're losing our danger to each other, men are also losing their ability to self-regulate, right? So that's a pressure that needs to be maintained. We have to maintain our ability to be dangerous to each other. I also just want to clarify that there are no humans are inherently a prey species, right? So where we're seeing prey behavior, that's a luxury. That's a luxury afforded through the subsidy of safety, right? And so that's being taken for granted, and that shouldn't be taken for granted. If you want to act like prey, if you want to not defend yourself, you want to not, you know, take responsibility for those things, you need to understand that somebody else is doing that on your behalf. On your behalf. So.
Can I want to interject because you are correct. However, when I say women have a prey response, it's over the worry about the children.
Right.
Right. That, in other words, they tend to worry like a prey animal because of that. Right. Hello, Maurice. Thank you for joining us. What just switched? Who just moved?
Jacob.
Eric dropped out or lost connection.
Eric and Jacob. All right. Okay, so I was trying to pose the question, what can we do about this? We've of course addressed a lot of this question in the policy area of the constitutional reforms. Right, we've said that the family has to be the first system of production. Right? There's economic production, right? There's survival, but then there's also intergenerational production, which is the family. And it's actually, people are actually producing humans is actually an important aspect of intergenerational persistence. So not just their reproduction, but their training. And so my view is that this is largely a matter of institutional reform and economic reform. In other words, reforming marriage and reforming the economy and reforming mostly debt, because that's driving the real issue here. And then education as debt reduction. This is a problem. So we can change a lot of the incentives, and certainly we can change it to the Singapore model where, if I want to retire comfortably, I would need to have 4 kids. Because my retirement is based on the production of my kids. This is the same thing with family health care, is that while you are required to pay into your healthcare services, quite a bit of taxes in Singapore goes into subsidizing healthcare. But healthcare is within the family is a tradable good. So if I'm younger, I can use some of my healthcare expense to give to my parents for their care. So you could do in-family, actually do cross-family, but in-family healthcare transfers to help pay for different things. So we can restore all the incentives to produce the family, despite what the left has so desperately done to undermine the institution of the family. Just like we can restore the law, despite what the left has done to undermine the institution of the law. And we can probably fix education, although it probably means a freaking house cleaning. I was watching Brandon there. It's going to require mostly full replacement in education because of what the left has done to it. So we can refix these things. They're not, in other words, from an engineering perspective, none of these problems are unsolvable. The problem is political, in that guess who's determining who's elected? Single women. And who's the problem? Single women. That's who's actually determines who gets elected, is because the camps are already established. The only defectors are single women. And so why are single women, in particular educated single women, defectors? Now we know the answer. I'm just hoping somebody else will explain that answer here. But that's actually the problem. So we need political reform in order to change the incentives to make possible the restoration of family and relationships. And yeah, it's a pretty big overhaul, but it's not as big as the Roman reforms, where they took people's land away and gave it away to others and disrupted everything. It's totally possible to do. It's not even as big a disaster as the effort, a disastrous amount of work as the reforms under FDR during the Great Depression. So this is all possible. And if we change the incentives, then people's behavior will change to adapt to those incentives. I think the optimistic side is that humans are slow, but they eventually get there. Right? It may take us a couple of generations to screw up so bad that it's catastrophic, like now. But it turns out that the younger generation looks, as Noah says, looks at the past two generations of women and says, "Boy, you really screwed this up for us." All right. So
almost every woman I talk to regrets borrowing money to go to university.
Yeah.
It's very rare that I meet a woman who goes, "Oh, that was a great investment." It's 90% feel that it was a waste of money. See, here's the thing. Any problem in society that's not pretty quickly resolved is because there's a large group of people that don't want to resolve it. Correct. It's never because it's hard. It's because there's people who just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
What we have to do is, women are not happy with the current status quo. We have to stoke that and direct it in a way that's productive. We have to channel their emotions, or help them channel their emotions in a productive way. Women are angry that they can't have kids because they're in too much debt. Channel that. Well, this is the solution, and this is how you get that solution. Find out what things they're angry about, and at minimum, it neutralizes their opposition to it. But again, it's going to come down to men are going to have to decide: are we going to protect women, including from their own bad decisions, or not?
aggression has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It has to go somewhere. We're an aggressive species. We used to create adversarial environments to produce excellence. We don't do that anymore. Your aggression should be turned towards the systems that abused your children.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're not a parent. We can gut them. You just go, well, we want all our money back that we paid you all the years you abused our kids. And this is when you outwardly did it in front of us and made us thank you for it.
Haven't you guys have some,
Shots and so on.
haven't you had some, your Brandon's very active. Haven't you had some legal success in this direction?
This is a successful tactic where they are aggressing upon you. Respond with aggression. You will be brought to court. Make the principled case. If
Yep.
you lose, and you might escalate because
Yep.
you made the principal case.
Yep.
And that's it. You will flood the courts with so many cases that are so similar, they will settle across the cases, which means you're going to get your money back from paying into a system that harmed your children. Because if you don't have a system that you want. And you have all the things that debt represents. You are sitting in the house that you owe the bank for. Don't get up. This is not a hard problem at all. You just stiff the people who made the fake stuff and harm the people who harmed your children. And you don't apologize for it.
I know a few couples. I know a few couples that use some financial trickery or whatever to move all of the husband's school debt in with the wife's school debt under her. And then they didn't get married. They got church married, but not legally married. So he's not responsible for her debts. And she just told them, take a hike. I'm never paying anything else. I'm going to be a professional mother now. And so she's the whoever she owes the money to, it doesn't matter. It's done. They're never going to get paid. She has no property. She owns nothing. And she's happy. She owns that. That's one case where she owns nothing and she's happy. And the other advantage to that is they're both highly dependent on each other. Men are always highly dependent on the mother of their children, but now she's dependent on him as well. And in those relationships, the balance between the sexes is restored.
So the idea that you said a few minutes ago about you have 4 children or plus, then your income tax goes to 0. We should apply that to student debt, student loan forgiveness.
Yes.
And that's one powerful incentive.
Look, the whole thing is we can't, the reason for the shift in the value of the degree is the prohibition on testing, like IQ and personality testing in the workforce. If we can test by that, then the college degree is useless, because really we find out that college, what we learn in college is useless. So we accumulate 100. In other words, what does Peter Thiel say? There's 2 degrees that need a college education, aside from like theoretical physics, right? But 2 degrees, and that's like petroleum engineering and software engineering. This is everything else can be
I think software engineering could be a trades job.
Well, I mean, this is like, what are you talking about? Programming or? I mean, engineering. I mean, it does take a while.
I've met some very talented engineers on Microsoft. 2 of the top 2 engineers I've worked with, they were they only graduated from high school.
Well, I mean, I learned it. I didn't have to take it in college, right? I taught myself programming. So I agree. So so you've just taken computer science off it. The point is that anything you can learn in college, most of it can be taught part-time in 3 years. The most sophisticated degrees, that's basically what it takes. The first year of college is, of course, just orientation. The second 2 years are where you do your learning, and the third year the second 2 years, and the fourth year is kind of silly. So when we look at this, it's extreme. You have most, like teaching. You know how long it takes to teach somebody? 12 weeks to be a teacher. Why? Because there's only one. It's the dumbest. Either have the capacity to empathize with people, and you can learn how to organize the curriculum into student monitoring, which is basically it's a trivial program management, right? Or you are not
One of the best primary school teachers I ever met was a nun with a grade 9 education.
Yeah.
She was so beloved by everyone, the other teachers, the students. There were people coming back to see her who their grandkids were being taught by her, and they'd been taught by her.
Right.
And she put the effort, she learned on the job.
Yes. So in the end, we can fix all this, right? And Brandon is telling you what the Institute's policy is that we're going to go into lawfare. I mean, that's where we're headed, right? We have to have all the work done beforehand, but we're going to go into counter lawfare or lawfare, whatever it is. And that's the Institute's direction of development, because that's the way you win, is that you just raise the cost of maintaining your essentially corruption over time. So I don't know why we can't win this, right? I mean, this is not an unbreakable problem, but it's a matter of, how many parents want to be hated by their school administrators and teachers.
You don't want to be on the side the administrators are on when it flips. And whether
Yes.
that's now, when we do it now by choice, or it's a few years from now when it happens by the angry people from the bottom because they've realized it, right? And they've integrated the realization, which is going to take too long. I mean, the integration of the realization that you were harmed through the years you were harmed, you will push yourself outside the window of being able to solve the problem. This place moves way too fast for the systems that we have without overburdening them so that they break.
Yeah.
We don't have another choice. We haven't had another choice. So we can absolutely do it.
Any victories like this that don't come with actually retaking power will be temporary at best.
We don't want temporary. Persistent.
How would we flip the school administration? I mean, in other words, is this a war of attrition and occupy territory a little bit at a time, or is it going to be a fell swoop type of deal?
Well, I'm going to
What
give
if we started waging lawfare?
we're going to give everybody the tools to act aggressive to the capacity that they can, and we're going to identify the targets that they can aggress towards. So
Basically, you use the courts as a means of the agency of the courts as an activist organization, and this overrides any ability for them to maintain their secrecy or policy or whatever they want, and it puts an expense on them that they're not willing to bear or not able to bear. So this is not very conservative. In other words, we prefer to make things civil, but sometimes you have to meet an enemy on their terms, not on yours. And so we just prefer to stay within the civil society, argument, discourse toward common beneficial ends. That's not how the opposition works. They work through sedition and undermining. So they work through being untrustworthy and uncooperative. So, we have to basically use the courts. So that's our.
You have to reciprocate like with like. That's the number one thing. You have to reciprocate force like with like, right?
It's
This was required for gun rights to spread in the United States. It was done through lawfare largely. And when the states recognized that they were losing the cases over and over and over again, they started to pass laws that were constitutional versus the laws that weren't. Many of the same people who were involved in the pro-Second Amendment movement are now involved in the school choice movement and other things along the lines of reforming education. They have the skills to do it. They've done it before. The difference is now they're kind of grown up and they've got this established network. So it's going to be a lot faster than the progress we saw in the Second Amendment. It's going to be very slow at first and then very fast.
And it's like anything else. It's a momentum building process. I mean, I look at it from, and I think of it from the Supreme Court standpoint. And so if you look at the court standpoint, they went through under Judge Scalia what women are going through right now, which is, oh, that sounded really good. Back in the 60s when we did it, and back in the 40s when we did it, we thought we were doing the right thing. Holy fuck, did we screw up? We got to fix this. Well, Scalia comes out and he starts with this whole thing of, okay, let me tell you what the law really means, right? And look what happens when we don't obey the law. And so, I mean, I'm sort of in the Scalia camp. So the court reformed, and look how quickly things are changing right now, because we got the Federalist Society, right, to train a generation of judges, a couple generations of judges now, who wanted to restore the science of law and the sacredness of law. And the public has no idea what these terms mean, like this commonality, concurrency, or why they exist, or what the whole point of sovereignty is in legislative process. They don't, why this is the optimum form of social engineering, right? I mean, the public has no idea. They're completely ignorant of it. Same reason they're completely ignorant of economics, because the enemy's interest to maintain their ignorance. So it's fixable.
Yeah, it's not a matter of fighting like with like, right? We don't want to fight degeneracy with degeneracy, right? It's a matter of being dangerous to everything that threatens you, using every means available to you to be dangerous to everything that threatens you. Everything that's being done to us is being done because the people doing it don't fear us, right? So if you reintroduce the danger through legal means, through presence, through being capable of violence, then a lot of those things stop being done. We've been talking a lot about women, and the value of men to women is protection. If you are not demonstrably dangerous, you cannot protect a woman. You don't offer that value to her. So why would she pursue you or adjust her behavior to attract you, right? We have to be dangerous, or these things are going to continue.
So I think that from that, I have 2 points, right? You're right. It's not about reciprocal like was like. What I mean is, you have the capability of everything on the spectrum. And what we've been doing so far is just restrict ourselves to the lowest level of force. And of course, the other side is going to fear us. But knowing that you have the capability to go all out, that's important. Not only that you know, but the other side also knows. Make sure the other side knows. And then reciprocate their level of violence in, it's the best term to put it, that in the same level. Like, for example, you can't reciprocate someone calling you a bad name with deadly force. That's what I mean.
Well, I mean, so look at, 1982, it's 82, 92, 02, 12, 22, right? A bunch of kids in Yale, Harvard, and Chicago said, right, because of course, I'm older, so I remember 1982 because I was in college at the time. Right. So I look back and I'm like, because we knew what was going wrong because we'd seen the 70s. Right. So it happened in 82. It took from 82 to Trump to get the court back into law. Right. It took a while. Now, they did it through simply national political incentives in the political process. Do we want to take that long, or do we want to be aggressive and use lawfare to make it happen? So we've got the resource now. We've got the court. So with the court, we can use it to restore what we would call rule of law, but restore human cooperation. All right. So Noah, did we cover your topic that you wanted to cover?
Very thoroughly.
I loved it when you said before the meeting that's what you wanted to talk about. I'm like, oh, this will be a hot one. All right. So
there's one thing I want to add on that subject of Noah's tweet. I think part of the problem is that the supply of protection has been detached from the production of authority. So I think that might be part of the dimension there.
Also, part of it is that if you put education in place at a high cost, that women are willing to pay. And so the revenue potential in the university is targeted to that bias, which is the left-wing bias, right? And if you offshore jobs for the middle working, the working and the lower middle class, what you're going to get is an asymmetry between women who go early into clerical work that's reasonably well paid, and men who have to work through the career cycle in the trades to get to being reasonably well paid. And in doing that, they still have the difference between the dirty job and the clean job, right? Because that's what you go to college for, right? Is to not have to work in a factory, right? That's really the reason, right? You go to college so you don't have to work with your hands. And so this leads to disharmony in the economic system. Whereas the male equivalent of physical labor is actually children.
There's one other factor that shouldn't be ignored, that we're seeing the first generation that was raised under the zero tolerance policies at school, where women, basically schools are run by women, where women enforced upon young men a rule that they were not allowed to use physical violence to protect themselves or anyone else. And so they were 20 years. I remember when this came in when I was a kid, and I literally said, screw you to them, to the teachers. I said, I know where your cars are. If you're going to get me in trouble for this, I'm going to fight back. Yep. And so I didn't have a problem with it. But the kids coming right after me, there was a zero tolerance policy. You could be the victim and you're still going to get suspended. And so young men today, they just want to, look, I just don't want to get involved. And they're checking out from their responsibilities, even to defend themselves. And so we see that with all these women slapping men on videos, and they just stand there doing nothing. So it's really? A complete. Oh yeah,
is that a thing?
Yeah. It's a huge thing. Yep.
Well, the very least you could do is pepper spray them.
Well, what it is these women really want a response. Okay, please put limits on me. Nope, no one's put limits on him. Maybe if I slap him in the face, he'll put limits on me. Slap him in the face. No, he's not. How much do I have to humiliate this man before he acts like a man? And so they're going to push it, and until they find out. You know, it's that fuck around and find out graph. And eventually they find out, and and then this gives them an opportunity to go on and say, oh, I've been hit. I'm a victim. And they can join the victim crowd. This is intentional.
So fucked up. Oh God.
And it's baiting the man into
just to end it on a happy note.
I mean, the man is probably going to be punished for even defending himself.
That's what New York's already doing, right? You saw that guy in the subway get prosecuted for defending himself in the crowd there. So
he's going to get off, isn't he? He'll get off, won't he? Won't he get off?
Through appeal. He probably won't get off in New York, but he'll get off through appeal.
Sure.
Can ruin someone's life still.
Yeah.
Get off. You're getting dragged through the courts. It's not getting off.
I remember when Bernard Getz did that when I was
a punishment.
More Bernard Getz did that as a kid. He shot I don't know if you know about this, but he shot some people on a subway, and it was purely self-defense. And they tried to make it out like he was a stalker going on the subway, looking for this opportunity. And and then we had, I don't know if you remember this either, we had youth groups that would go together in berets that had to police the subways. And so we had this really lax police system in the 70s. In the 80s and 90s, they brought it back. And so what happens is we have this sinusoidal crime enforcement, crime abandonment cycle that's just absurd.
Well, you know why they projected onto him that he was some sort of a bully hunter, is they were desperately afraid that men were going to start doing that.
Yeah, of course.
And they had to make this example because they understand if you allow violence and crime to go on long enough, there is a percentage of men that will switch into hunter mode.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it becomes beyond the police's ability to deal with it.
Yes. Well, I mean, but that's what we want, is it to be, you know, if the police should be there for. We'd have to have a police force, like, you know, look at the FSB does in Russia. I mean, it's as big as the freaking army. That's where all their money goes, to police individuals. Do you want to have that? I don't. I'd rather trust my fellow men to do it without the veil of authority.
So some woman said, well, men aren't protecting women right now. And I'm like, ask the police to step aside and we will.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. So if we've covered that topic, we've got a half hour left. I think. Yes. So is there what's left on the agenda to talk about today?
So a couple of things to follow up from last week about the fall gathering, and if we have time, I also want to review the backlog of questions for the office hours. We got 18.
Are we promoting office hours this time or no?
I had forgotten to promote the office hours, but it's basically once every 2 weeks on Saturdays.
We have enough questions for it already.
Yeah, we have enough questions.
We don't need to promote it because we have enough questions, is what you're saying. Okay,
we got enough questions to at least.
I'm sorry,
do the
I
next
misunderstood. That was lame of me. So the first question was the meetup progress, which I think is Brandon's got a handle on that. And the second question is the questions for the Q&A, which Martin, have you gotten to go over the Q&A questions yet?
Well, most of them have been there last time already.
So the answer is yes.
The answer's prepared.
Yes.
Okay. Last time I checked, there were 2 more.
Okay. Are any?
We have Martin more or less have written answers for, I want to say, about 60% of them. Some of the questions, like number 8, that's left to Curt. And then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 new questions at the bottom without any answers.
Bryan, why are you grinning like this? Like you're a cat who's holding on to a mouse for the past 20 minutes.
Why? I don't know.
You just like the conversation. All right. I'm like, what has he got? What is he thinking about that I want to share the joy in? All right.
Well, I'm mostly here for the meetup conversation. I think that's why I was invited in,
Oh,
or at least invited back. So I think it's going to be a good one. And I think
I want you here all the time, but apparently that was that wasn't communicated. Brandon, you want to tell us is it right to ask you where things are with the meetup?
Curt, can you give me a screen share, right, so I can show the list of action items and stuff?
Share screen. Right now.
Okay. So. There we go. Is it coming through?
Whack off logic. Why are we showing a grid of whack off logic?
No, that's my desktop background.
And
Bryan would know what that's all about.
Whacking off? That's not a subject of office hours, is it?
What just happened? Something happened to my screen. Can you guys still see?
Bryan, you know what whacking off is about?
There's apparently a logic to it.
I see there's like a peak and then the chart's perfect.
For those that don't know, it's
some sort of a
It's-
cadence to the
it's
movements too.
It's about investing for those who don't know what it is.
It's technical analysis.
Even most of
actually.
the words are they're pretty spot on.
I noticed there's a climax in there.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, I'm experiencing some technical difficulty here. Can you guys see the doc?
Yeah.
Yes, we can see the doc. We just see some
Because
stuff.
my
beside, not a problem.
monitor, the monitor I'm on is just blacking out. I can't see anything at all.
Yeah, it's showing it.
Well,
Oh,
do we
wait,
really need to
it's-
see? Do we need to see it? Or
I don't
can
think
we
it's going to
always
be
do it?
necessary.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's just shut it down and
Can you shut it down from your end?
Yeah, he can't see anything.
one participant share at a time.
Oh, maybe I
Okay,
can.
and I want it to be, there we
Does that
go.
work?
You did it.
Phew. Okay.
You
Yeah,
know,
my monitor
Francis,
is
aren't
blinking
like
in
you a
and out for some reason.
professional technology guy who's responsible for a lot of other people's
Which
technology?
is why I hate technology, because this shit, when it doesn't work, like, what do you want me to do? Bust out a kernel debugger and figure out what's going on with a video stack?
Oh, oh, Christ. This is conversation.
Okay.
We started out in such a
So-
lofty ambition. Now, how did we end talking about whacking off and technological incompetence? Anyway, Luke, aren't you the one that usually drags the conversation into the gutter?
No, it's always you.
Those things are correlated, whacking off and incompetence.
So when's the event? How many people are going? Are
You
you
got it.
prepared? Are you serving drinks? Is there food?
I got you,
Is
Ryan.
there-
Who's
I got
bringing
it.
the strippers?
Yeah.
That's
Beat me
Bryan.
to it.
November 10th to the 12th. Friday night is a dinner. Saturday, we're going to do speeches and stuff. Sunday, we're going to wrap up. It's at a sports bar that my sister-in-law's family owns. We can have 70 plus people upstairs. We have the upstairs room to ourselves. We will have some of the pool halls set off like a convention, so people can set up a table and sell their wares, I suppose. It'll be open. It's a weekend, so there will be people that come in off the street. And I haven't started advertising yet, but I'd like to need to move to a larger venue.
Awesome.
Right now, most of who is sitting here is confirmed to show up, which means every one of them will be in the advertisement as an attraction. What we just went over today, restoring the family education and law. I don't know, that's our theory to practice. That's what the whole thing is about, so that we can teach some place to do exactly that. I'll have Mark Bashaw there. He's the COVID-19 whistleblower for the Army. I'll have my nonprofit there who's winning cases locally against the schools. I'm working on Sean McBrearty, who's fighting the hypersexualization of kids in Maine and doing a reasonable job at it. I'll use him as an attraction as well. I just have to entice him to make a 4-hour drive, which will look like paying for his food and drinks, something like that. So how many people can you guys get to show up is the question.
I can get.
What's the recommendation on housing, flying in? I know that Will and I are talking about possibly driving, but if
Now
that's 13
Now we're
hours.
talking. Now we're talking. The more of our guys we get to go who have cars or are renting rooms in a particular place, you open up options for cheapening that particular place. If there's enough of them, you rent out a room, floor at a hotel and you stay there together, or you rent out a wing at a motel and you stay there together. There are a few of those. I will ping people who are in my locality, who may be able to offer rooms up, people who are close to me. I will have one room up for offer. It's possible that my brother is going to have, he might have a room, but he also might be under construction. But there will be other people like that who have some space to house people who are more intimate. So this week I'm going to work on getting people's itineraries. Like, when are you coming out? How long do you plan to stay? Do you have a place to stay? Are you driving? And then with that information, there'll be a set of opportunities afforded to us, and we'll see who wants to take some of those. So after the next staff session, I don't plan to advertise this like for tickets to locals until late October. because no one's on a schedule that's more than a few weeks long around here. They're local already, and the people who are coming are going to be a draw. And you guys are going to invite friends. My friends are going to invite friends. I'm going to tell people
I'm
to be there on the weekend.
I can get at least 20 people that I know to show up.
So I will get a backup venue for at least the day that we want to attract people and do speeches lined up.
Wait. So there's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right?
Correct.
Right. I only heard you talk about Sunday as right. What's Saturday?
Saturdays when we'll do the speeches, and
Right.
so
And Sunday.
Sunday we'll wrap up, do exit interviews, a round table, something like that. Friday night will just be a dinner. I have been turned on to a caterer that I think will do an excellent job. I just don't know if he'll take the job because he just moved out of catering because he likes to make pizza. But I think I can get him back to do the catering for the night. And if not, I'll look into making the dinner a bit more exclusive by getting a chef or something like
These
that.
freaking Italians, they got somebody, a friend or cousin or a relative or somebody somewhere who's got some small business running somewhere.
That's right. So I'll find people to spruce the event up. I want to make it an attraction so that we're giving back to the people around here. Right now, it's looking like all the money is going to stay in my family's hands, essentially.
So Brandon, well, actually, all the staff. I've been looking for a event hosting site where people can sign up. There's obviously the usual choice is Eventbrite, but I found one where if we want to sell tickets, there's this eventtrade.com that offers a very similar service for a flat fee. So question is, do we want to sell event tickets? Because there's going to be some costs associated with the catering and the venue and everything. And if we do, okay. Yes. So Bryan, let's work together to create that website. I've already got a template going and we just need to put on the schedule and everything.
Right.
You got it.
Schedules, attractions,
it's hard for
and
me to invite people until that's ready. So as soon as that's ready.
My plan is to plan out the day in the middle. I roughly have 10 to 12 for people talking and doing speeches, then lunch, then 2 to 5 people talking and doing whatever, then dinner, then 6 to 9 people talking, and then drinks. So we got 3-hour windows to put in content. However you guys want to do the content is fine with me.
I think the content and all that is secondary to the outline of, we know we're going to be this days. This is a booking price. And then we can start inviting people, because people have this peak of interest when you invite them. That's when they're likely to go, yeah, I'm going to pull the trigger on this and commit. And make sure you put no refunds. They're going to commit. And if that doesn't have anything to do, if they have nothing to do at this point, they're going to run away, or they're going to forget.
So we basically just need to nail down 2 things, right? The itinerary, basically the schedule, and the ticketing price. So the ticket price has to cover the menu plus catering and whatever else that we'll provide for the attendees. For dinner and stuff, we can probably go split.
I want to do invitation only for the dinner, but with a ticket. Would like to be a variable ticket price, meaning if you're going to come and invest with us, you can pay as much as you want for the dinner, right? But it's this amount minimum. We have plenty of time to work that out. So this can all be worked out over the next couple of weeks. What I would like to do is make revenue so that we can pursue something afterwards. I mean, we should have an action afterwards to pursue, and some of it's going to cost some money. So we should be telling these people exactly what we're going to do, which avenues we're going to pursue, who we're going to look to hire, and to put them to what end in order to restore the family education and law. So that is going to require
ticket, VIP ticket, founder's ticket.
Now we're talking. For people paying, I'll give them lanyards so they can drink and eat. Downstairs, there's no ticket necessary at all. So I want to use the convention to draw people in and be able to have them donate while they're there. So, hey, we actually don't have room for you upstairs. If you want to catch what went on, we recorded it, right? Or we can stream it downstairs. And this is what we're doing. So pony up, because no one else is doing anything.
If you buy a VIP or higher ticket, you get a signed copy of my book.
See, here we go.
So basically,
Now,
no,
the service I'm looking at
no
does
strippers, whatever
offer
it is, no
ticket
strippers.
types.
We can go to a strip club afterwards that is in the area right down the street.
No would have been a fine answer. All right. Okay, so first of all, Brennan, thank you very much.
Welcome.
So I would love to have a web address and something to be able to sell.
We're on it.
Right.
So if you, Kurt, if you guys are good with using eventcrate.com, just looking the staff notes for today, and I have a website in progress already. It's very bare right now because it's basically the template. It does have the title and dates for the event, and we just need to fill in it's a customizable web page.
You get but we'll need the prices and whatever, all that other crap too.
Yeah, we do. So
So
that's
I
the
don't
thing we need
want
to
to
figure
I don't
out.
want to reach out early. I want to reach out when we're launching, right? But I have a pretty good sized group here in Connecticut, and I'm pretty sure I can get a lot of those guys to come. But that said, it's possible that we get quite a few others if we just work at it. Unfortunately,
If there's a converging or a diverging interest, I can get an additional venue and we can put on 2 events in the area. 70 people is not that many people. If you want to fill something for political activism and target the people who are actually active and who always come out, who are definitely going to show up, we can do that. You can have a political based one somewhere else. I'd like to garner enough funds through the invitation dinner and the event on Saturday so that we can choose whether or not to do that.
All right. Okay. Francis, what's next?
Other than that, so quick question about recording the event, video recording. What well, this might be a menu detail, but what level of production quality would we like to have?
What level would the highest we can get?
Well, because there's a free option, which is I just take my camera and record it in 1080p.
That's fine. I already have someone who's coming who will do audio and video. They're a professional at it. So I would like more than one person. Redundancy is good.
Yes.
And that most of our guys are capable of interviewing, like any of our guys are good to pull off into a booth at the restaurant and sit down, have a conversation with them and record the content. So
If you want to go real
Yeah.
high end, I know someone that'll do it, but we'll have to do a little fundraising for it. You remember the 21 convention that I used to go to? Well, all the people are available from that do the video recording from that because it's not happening this year. So
Well, here's what we learned from Mises and there's 2 basic kinds of video. You video the lectures as individual elements. And then you have somebody like Francis walk around and interview a bunch of people. And those 2 things together is what creates the relationship and the knowledge distribution. I want to make sure that we make that in the content we provide, there is grassroots activism, right? And then there's the Institute's mission. And so what I worry about sometimes is I don't want to get put out with the crazies. Right. So anything that's solid, that's great. But in other words, like the school choice, right? I don't know, whatever it is, there's all these things. These are all good. But what I don't want to do is what happened to us last time, where I invited, I'm not going to mention the name, we invited a person from Europe, and his people showed up and they distributed flyers and whatever, and they got us burned. And so we have to be a little bit cautious about who we, not only who we invite, but the kind of people that pursue who we invite. What differs about us is that we tend to go after the family market, right? In other words, we're not going for the fringe young guys. And so let's just keep it sort of in that space.
Due to the subjects we're talking about, it might make sense to reach out to some of the heads of the parent-teacher associations and others who might be interested in these topics.
They're on my list.
Any activists we can find are good. All right, kids. What's next, Francis?
The only thing remaining is the Saturday office hour questions.
Okay, so I can, Martin, are there some things you can assign to me on there, or what's the status of these things?
I'll take a look.
Because I have them up here. And they look pretty, the questions all look pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, I filter out all the abusive ones.
All the what?
There's a couple people just because the form is open to the public, right? There are
Okay.
some people who just shout at obscenities or whatnot. Very few, but
So these questions have a lot of red on them. How do I know what's been answered and what's not?
the ones. So, are you talking about like written answer, or are you talking about actually answering the video?
Well, I'm looking at the document, right? And it has the next session Saturday 9/9. And then there are a bunch of questions. Some of them have red text after them.
So
I thought we answered some of these already.
No.
Everything under community questions for next session are questions that even with the red text, those are just questions that we've written the answer to, but have not done so in the video.
Okay, thank you.
If you look at past sections, right, 826, those are the ones we actually answered because they have a YouTube timestamp on them.
Okay. I got it. Thank you. So basically, if it's not answered, or if it's got my name on it, you want me to answer these? Martin?
Anything you have an opinion on, feel free to chime in.
All right, I'll do that. All right, kids, that's it's 11:44. I know a bunch of us have to leave shortly. I gotta stop. I moved you to the upper screen, so I'm looking up to heaven when I'm talking to you. That might be misinterpreted somehow. So here, I'll go down like this. So has that conclude our meeting for the day? All right, anybody else? All right, Noah, thank you very much for it. Jacob, it's really good to have you back.
Yeah, thank you guys for the great discussion.
And Bryan, I love having, I love having you. So I hope this becomes a regular thing and be with us. All right.
Sounds good.
And Luke, I'm sorry I didn't get to dig at you enough today. I'm all done with Luke's book, right? We finished. And now I've got to copy and paste all the marketing nonsense and the outlines into each one. And then, but now I want Luke to write another book, right? And we just didn't know, we just start yours, right? I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, that was great. I was all supercharged after that.
So hopefully, at least for me, the interviewing authors is really fun. So I'm gonna keep doing this just because it fills me with joy, especially when they're smart. All right, Bryan, would you ever do a Myth Matrix interview?
Oh yeah, sure.
I don't know how much you promote that or not, but I would like to talk about the way you've approached the problem, updating it for modernity at some point.
Sure. Yeah, that could be fun.
All right, guys. Thanks for the meeting. Again, for the audience, is Thursday, September 7th. I hope this was useful for you. And remember to like, subscribe, whatever, if you're one of our close followers. And thank you for letting us do our business in public and sharing it with you. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks for having us.